There is a moment, quiet, private, unspoken, when a person stands before a mirror and doesn't just see a reflection, but an interrogation. A mirror is not glass. It is a witness, a judge, a silent archivist of every emotion the world never saw. Sometimes, it is the only place where truth becomes unavoidable. And sometimes, it is where the darkest conversations begin, between the person the world praises and the person the mirror refuses to forget. There comes a time when a person stops seeing their reflection as a simple image and starts sensing it as a weight. Not the weight of beauty or flaws or angles, but the weight of existence itself. In those moments, the mirror becomes strangely alive. It holds stillness that presses against the chest, as if it knows what the person has been trying to outrun. They lean closer, just enough to breathe on the glass, and suddenly the face staring back seems unfamiliar in the most familiar way. It's the kind of moment that feels like a pause in the universe. A pause where the outside world disappears and the inner world steps forward. For many, this is where the discomfort begins. Because mirrors do not lie, even when people desperately wish they would. The eyes looking back feel older than the face they belong to. They carry fatigue the world never noticed. They hold stories that were never spoken aloud. They reflect how long someone has been pretending to be okay. And in that moment, the person realizes, the mirror has become a place where masks dissolve, where the face no longer performs, where the truth, quiet, exhausted, unpolished, finally returns home. This is the beginning. The first recognition that something inside has been calling for attention. And the mirror, unlike the world, cannot be distracted. The dark psychology of a mirror doesn't start with fear. It starts with honesty, a kind of honesty that feels almost unbearable, because it comes from the part of oneself that is tired of being blurred, softened, or edited away. It is the silent moment when a person looks at their reflection and whispers, without words, "I know this isn't the full story," and you do too. Long before a person becomes aware of their reflection, the emotional blueprint for how they will face a mirror is already forming. A child stands before a mirror with uncomplicated wonder. They smile at their own smile. They reach out to touch the glass, not knowing that the world will soon teach them what a flaw is, what acceptable looks like, what good enough means in the eyes of others. This is where the shadow begins, not in the mirror itself, but in the stories people inherit. Some grew up in homes where silence was the only form of safety. They learned to keep their feelings folded, to present a face that wouldn't trigger anger or disapproval. By the time they reached adolescence, their reflection was no longer a companion. It became a shield. Others absorbed the subtle critiques of society, the comparisons, the beauty standards, the messages that whispered, "You must be more to be loved." And so the mirror became a measuring device, not of appearance, but of worth. There are also those who never felt seen by anyone. For them, the mirror became the first, and sometimes only, place where their own existence felt acknowledged. But this acknowledgement carried a sting, because once the mirror saw them, they had no choice but to see themselves. These origins form a quiet architecture inside the mind. The mirror becomes a doorway to old teachings, old fears, old narratives that were not chosen, but absorbed. Every time a person stands in front of their reflection, they are not just looking at themselves, they are meeting the ghosts of expectations, comparisons, and unspoken judgments that were planted long ago. This is the unseen foundation, the birthplace of the discomfort, the reason mirrors become heavy, haunted, or strangely difficult to face. What people see in the mirror is rarely the problem. What they learn to see, long before they understood themselves, is where the darkness begins. Psychologists call it self-referencing. The mind doesn't just look at a reflection. It evaluates, compares, and interprets it. The mirror becomes a psychological stage, where identity meets expectation. When a person looks at themselves, the brain starts stitching together two realities: the internal world they've been carrying, and the external image shaped by others. But these two rarely match. This mismatch triggers what is known as cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable clash between who someone is and who they believe they should be. Mirrors intensify this clash. They freeze the face so the mind cannot look away. And in that frozen stillness, insecurities echo louder. People don't fear their reflection. They fear the interpretations their mind attaches to it. A mirror psychologically activates several internal processes. 1. The inner critic. The brain revisits stored criticism, sometimes from years ago, and projects it onto the reflection as if it were fact. 2. Self-discrepancy. The distance between the actual self, the ideal self, and the expected self creates pressure. In the mirror, these three collide. 3. Identity anchoring. A person's face is the anchor of their identity. When they feel lost internally, their appearance feels unfamiliar externally. 4. Emotional leakage. Suppressed emotions surface subtly, in the eyes, posture, or tension, and the mind notices what the person tries to hide. This is why the mirror becomes unsettling. It doesn't reflect the face. It reflects the psychological landscape behind it. Every tiny shift in expression becomes a clue. A flicker of sadness, a buried anger, a longing for peace, a fatigue too deep for language. The mirror forces recognition. You have been feeling more than you allowed yourself to admit. This is the dark psychology of reflection. Not distortion, but revelation. Mirrors do not create pain. They amplify the truths people avoid, because those truths have nowhere else left to go. There are two versions of a person: the one carried through the world, and the one carried inside the heart. The mirror tries to merge them, and this is where resistance begins. People resist their reflection for many reasons. Not because they dislike how they look, but because the mirror threatens their emotional disguise. The world teaches performance, self-control, composure, smiles that hide exhaustion, silence that hides fragility, confidence that hides uncertainty. But the mirror is immune to performance. It captures the micro-expressions that betray deeper truths. The slight downturn of the eyes, the tightened jaw, the softened posture that only appears in solitude. This is where the conflict grows, because the person standing in the mirror knows too much. They remember the nights of quiet overthinking. They remember the promises broken to themselves. They remember the longing for simplicity, warmth, and gentleness. They remember fears they never confessed. A mirror forces confrontation with emotions that have been carefully folded away, so the resistance takes form. A quick glance instead of a long look, a habit of avoiding the eyes, a preference for dim lighting, a sudden desire to adjust something, hair, clothes, posture, anything to distract from the internal discomfort. Some even develop a strange detachment, as if the reflection were someone else, a stranger who somehow looks too familiar. The conflict is not about appearance. It is about identity, about the fear that the reflection sees through the facade, about the worry that the truth inside is too heavy to face alone. Mirrors become unsettling, because they reflect the self that refuses to disappear, the self that desires acknowledgement, even when acknowledgement feels overwhelming. The person resists because they know, deep down, the mirror reveals the parts they work hardest to silence. The turning point doesn't happen in a dramatic moment. It arrives quietly, often after months or years of subtle resistance. One evening or morning, or in a moment unexpectedly fragile. The person meets their reflection and finally stops trying to rearrange it. No adjusting, no analyzing, no performing, just looking, and something inside dissolves. Not in a painful way, in a truthful way. For the first time, the reflection looks less like a threat, and more like an equal, a witness, a companion that endured the same storms, held the same exhaustion, and carried the same unspoken hopes. The person realizes, the mirror was never the enemy. It was the only place where the truth still had a voice. This realization creates a subtle shift, a softening of the eyes, a loosening of the shoulders, a quieter breath, because beneath the layers of expectation, criticism, comparison, and emotional armor, there is a self that has been longing to be seen, without judgment, not perfect, not polished, not stronger than everything, just real. This is the moment the glass breaks, not outwardly, but inwardly. The illusion breaks, the distortion breaks, the inherited narratives break, the shadows loosen their grip, and the person finally understands. They have been looking at themselves through the lens of old wounds. The mirror wasn't dark, the memories were. This realization is not loud. It is peaceful, almost sacred, a quiet homecoming to the face that has always belonged to them. Healing doesn't begin with loving the reflection. It begins with learning to stay with it, to stand before the mirror without flinching, without avoiding the eyes, without rushing to correct or criticize, to simply acknowledge, this is me, not the role, not the performance, not the expectations. Over time, the relationship with the mirror becomes softer, not adoring, but accepting. A person starts noticing details they once ignored, the resilience in their posture, the kindness in their gaze, the quiet strength in features shaped by years of survival. Slowly, the reflection becomes less of a judgment, and more of a companion. They begin to understand that the mirror is not telling them who they are. It is asking, are you willing to see yourself as you truly are? This question becomes the core of healing. Some days the answer is yes. Some days it is no. Both are part of the process. The person begins to integrate the truths the mirror revealed, the softness they suppressed, the exhaustion they carried, the courage they overlooked, the humanity they denied themselves. They realize the mirror is not just a surface. It is a space of meeting. A place where the external form and internal experience align, just enough to allow understanding. With time, the mirror loses its darkness, not because the person changes their face, but because they change the story attached to it. They stop searching for flaws, and start recognizing presence. They stop seeing the reflection as a verdict, and start seeing it as a companion through change. The integration is gentle, unhurried, like learning to breathe more deeply. After years of shallow breaths, the person doesn't become someone new, they become someone whole. In the end, the mirror remains what it always was, a silent witness. It remembers every face you carried, every version of yourself you outgrew, every emotion that trembled quietly beneath the surface. But now the mirror reflects something different. Not perfection, not performance, not the shadows of old expectations. It reflects presence. It reflects a person who is learning to meet themselves with honesty and gentleness. The dark psychology of a mirror was never about fear. It was about truth. And truth, when faced with compassion, loses its darkness. In the quiet moment when you stand before your reflection, you are not confronting a stranger. You are returning to someone who has been waiting to be seen all along. The mirror remembers you. And now, finally, you remember yourself too.